Hey everybody, welcome back to Klowd9. Very fortunate today to have my very first guest on the video with us. This is my dad. He's visiting from Tennessee here in California. It's perfect because last week we talked about the importance of having self-confidence and mental toughness in slaying a dragon, those things that really scare you the most and taking those head on. And I mentioned last week about having confidence not only in yourself, but how important it was to have confidence that comes from other people, from the people that you surround yourself amongst. So it's pretty fitting to have a college soccer coach here, successful coach who is one of the most winningest college soccer coaches in Division II NCAA history as well as NAIA history. And today the focus is going to be a lot about building a team. So it's great to have a coach here who has put together several successful teams over the years, over the 30 plus year span of being a coach. And looking forward to hearing your thoughts and opinions on the subject of building a team here. All right, so when it comes to building a team, it really comes down to two big elements, would you agree, of your family and your friends. A lot of these personal development books that I've read and whatnot talk a lot about how important it is to have wellness within your family. But your background of family is quite different from the one that you've raised. So if you don't mind kind of opening it up, telling us a little bit about your childhood and what your family situation was like a little bit.
Well, first of all, I'm honored to be your first guest on your video with Klowd9. And as I think back, to my childhood in regards to, develop of things for me socially, um, I was the youngest of six brothers, or rather six boys. And so there's a lot of interaction, a lot of challenges that go into that uh, environment where, as the youngest of those, oftentimes, we're considered to be, that spoiled little brat, and we need to, we kind of get anything we want. But really, for me, it was very different through a variety of different things of losing my father at an early age. It wasn't so much, I got what I wanted. It was in some ways survival of the fittest. And so you learn to interact and you learn to do those things that you got to do, which is going to be best for you to survive in some ways. And so that was a big impact in me, and it wasn't always easy. It was challenging. I learned a lot, from my brothers in many ways, in both positive and in negative ways. And so I had a challenging childhood, very dysfunctional. In fact, by the time I was 15, my mother passed away, so I was pretty much on my own from that time.
You were 9.
So
It was 9 when your father passed away.
9 when my father died. So
6 years.
those were some trying times, but I think probably the one thing that really kept me going in many ways socially was just the relationship I had with my mother, even up through age 15 before she died. I was very close with her, and having a good interaction, with her. She was kind of like my biggest fan when it came to sports, and she would go to all my events, and she didn't know a whole lot about any of the games, but she was there, and that meant a lot to me. And so when she passed, obviously that was very difficult for me, but it was something that, I felt like, I'm going to have to press on, and sports kind of taught me how to do that. So, that was the big thing for me, socially growing up, is all those dynamics that contributed to it being a very, very difficult upbringing in many ways. Um, and I felt like when I had my own children, that I wanted it to be um, in a way where a relationship would be, would be a healthy, good environment, a safe home where you feel you could say things and do things and feel love and feel encouraged and feel confident, and I wanted to be able to instill that in my children. And I think my wife and I, we did the very best we can. We weren't always perfect with that, but we certainly tried to instill that. And that's something where probably you could speak a little bit more to how it was, from your end of how things went, growing up, and if you felt like you got that type of vote of confidence, the love, support, those things to help you be successful.
Yeah, well, I think, as opposed to several of my friends who didn't have the same kind of relationship to their parents as I did, I was very lucky, I was very fortunate, much more so fortunate to have a family that stuck together and have a father and a mother who was at all of my games and naturally
Mm-hmm.
and really kind of believed in me, and that I think was a big reason that helped propel me forward in sports and in academics as well. um, and it was kind of interesting seeing the difference between that and comparing it to a lot of the friends that I had, and knowing that their fathers weren't around, and what kind of impact that had on their home living situation and whatnot as well. Whereas I think we talk a lot about how when it comes to building a team that's going to help you succeed, is you have the team that was chosen for you, which is like the family that you're brought into,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you have the team that you choose,
Mm-hmm.
which is the friends, the people that you surround yourself the most, right?
Right. And that's absolutely right. I mean, you have a team that was given to you,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have a team that you basically put together. And as a coach, I have the privilege of putting together a team that I want. But let me just speak for a second on, that team that is just given to you, because sometimes that's what life does. It gives us something, and it may not be exactly the cards that we want.
Mm-hmm.
But how you respond to that, how you interact with people who might be difficult, how you interact with people who might have hurt you, especially people who are closest to you, and sometimes when they hurt you, that's a difficult thing and a traumatic thing that a lot of individuals deal with throughout their entire life. But how you deal with that is the beginning of how socially healthy you're going to be in life later on, is how you dealt with that. And for me as a young boy, I had to figure those things out, like of how, even though things weren't always great at home, not really having a father in the home, not having a mentor in the home, I needed to find it elsewhere, and I found it in some coaches, which was good. So, but that's the first step, is of how we deal with the team that's given to us,
Mm-hmm.
and how you respond to that is largely going to dictate how you're going to be, from a social standpoint later on, through your teens and into your young adult life and throughout life.
Which a lot of times, just to interject real quick, isn't necessarily just your family situation, but also in the work life as well, right? It goes into you taking on a new job, and then the people that you have to work with at that job on a regular basis,
Right.
and the
Yeah.
team that's kind of chosen for you at that point as well.
And there are many things, it'd be great if we could handpick everything we want in life and say this is how we have it, but we know it doesn't work like that. But how you respond to those type of things, and how you, deal with people who are difficult, and it says a lot about you as an individual, and in the bigger part, it's going to help you, be a little bit more self-fulfilled, and have an image of yourself that is worthwhile. Then perhaps sometimes, in a family setting, people come out of that and they don't feel very worthwhile, and that's the thing I always wanted for you and for your sister, is that, I wanted you to feel worthwhile and being able to do whatever you strive to do, whatever you feel like your calling is in life, that you pursue that and you believe in it and you go for it. And sure, sometimes as parents, we want you to go a different route. We like for you to, maybe go this way. But, I had to learn as a parent as well, is that, we got to just let go and just believe in the best, that you're gonna turn into the individual that you need to be, not so much that I want you to be.
Right. And I think I'm very fortunate, very lucky to have that kind of setting in my home. What kind of advice would you give to people who, aren't in that same kind of setting, especially you coming from a background where you didn't really have somebody to instill that confidence and belief in you as a kid, to other people who are, have that family situation that isn't ideal, that isn't really that healthy kind of home living situation? What would you say to them in their social life?
I often say that I was always a great candidate to be a homeless person
Yeah.
because, growing up and then losing, both parents by the time I was 16, um, and having grown up in an environment where, back in the day, at that time, way back in the 60s and the early 70s, the drug culture was very much a big part of things, just as it is today, I suppose, but in a different way. And, those things, if I would have gone that route, I could have easily ended up in, a situation where I didn't have a lot of drive and motivation and direction in my life. Thankfully, you know, uh, because of sport, for one thing, I kind of had some focus. I wanted to make something happen in my life. So I just say, I'm a big, I love the underdog. And probably because I feel like that's what I was. I was the underdog. I was the guy that wasn't supposed to make it, that had too many things against him and was just destined to be just nothing and not go to college. Nobody else in my family ever went to college, um, and completed the degree. I didn't quite have that. I did have some brothers who attended college, but, you know, there were a lot of things that were stacked up against me.
Hmm.
And so, um, it's kind of digging deeper, and I think you talked a little bit about, being mentally tough and being able to overcome those things in your last video, and that's what you need to do, you
Hmm.
know. But some of the resources to do that may come into what we're going to talk about next, and that is now that you got to be able to build your team.
Right. And no, exactly. It's a great segue because as you did pursue what you wanted to do and where your outlet for a lot of those struggles that you went through in life was through sports, was through your physical wellness in some ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you did that and then got to doing what you wanted to do of making sports, your career,
Mm-hmm.
a huge part of the success that fuels that career is recruiting, is building a team, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that you look for and try to emulate on your team?
Well, I'll say even before I get to building my team and some of the things that contributed to me and thinking of how I want to do that, I would say that even in my development as a person through college and as a young adult, a big part of my development as an individual comes from the people I chose to be around.
Right.
And so I had some really great friends in college.
So choosing your team, your own team, let
That
alone
was
like
my
the team
team
that you
of
coach, but
guys,
yeah.
right, of being around people that were going to be positive. I chose to be around, uh, people that were going to have, were driven in life, that wanted to make something of their life, that had, you know, uh, that had, those elements that, are appealing, that you say, you know what, I want to emulate what that person is. And, we call them mentors, whatever, but I even had friends that I selected to be like that. And I feel like that's where we go wrong. I mean, you can't do a whole lot if you've been born into a family that, doesn't really give you the support and give you those things. I mean, that's the team that you've been given,
Hmm.
okay? But you can have a lot to do in terms of
Who
the
you
of the
choose.
people who you want to be around, the friends that you choose to associate with. And I'm grateful that, through, my college days that I had some good people that really pointed me in the right direction and really helped me develop into the man that I wanted to become. And so those type of things then translated naturally into me as a coach of saying, you know what, I'm not just looking for people who are really good athletes, but I'm going to put on a, very high on the list of the type of, people they are to other people.
Hmm.
How they're going to fit into my team socially. And I feel like, over 30 years of coaching, some of my teams have done really well. We've done some nice things. And, I've had very few losing seasons, thankfully. But the teams that I've had, if there's one thing that I've done, is I've brought in, and I say this to this very day as a recruiting now at a Division II school, is that I bring in, my gift is I bring in good guys. Yeah, you got to be able to play. I'm not looking for a bunch of Boy Scouts. I want some guys that can come in who can play but are good people, guys that you want to be around, guys that are going to make you a better person, and guys that are going to, 5, 10 years from now, when it comes time for you to get married, I tell our guys, your teammates, oftentimes going to be standing right up there with you at the altar because that's how much they mean to you. They're lifelong friends. So that's something that I want to do to great, to give my players, my teams a great experience. Because if you have guys who are selfish and are the prima donna that it's all about them and aren't easy to get along with. Not to say I've had my share of those, but I've really tried to guard against bringing guys like that in. I've really focused more on trying to bring in quality young men that are going to come in and have all those attributes that are going to help us be successful. Because I feel like they go hand in hand. I feel like if you're socially in tune, you're the right kind of person, you've got good habits, you do those things in life, making the right choices, those things translate into success. And in an athletic realm, it could translate into winning. And we've had teams that have done that. But the bigger thing in life is that, those the types of people you hang around with, the types of people you choose to be around, and the type of people that, you're around as your teammates, all those things are going to contribute to you, how successful you might be later on in life.
Right.
So I feel like I owe that to my players. And in the same way that I've been able to, do that in terms of picking some good people to be around me over, my development as a young person who's kind of missing out on perhaps the healthiest of all family relationships. I did it externally, and those people helped me, go in the right direction. And now I want that to be part of my team. I want them to leave my program and say, win or loss, this was a great experience, and I'm a better man for coming here, and I've got some great friends and great relationships. But it all comes down to making good choices of the people that you want to be around.
Yeah, that you're going around, yeah. Just kind of interesting. I mean, saying especially that it's up to you to kind of organize, where a lot of these people on the team, they didn't necessarily choose the people that they're playing with, but you've kind of figured out ways to make these guys come together. I think one thing that I was always really impressed by seeing you coach throughout my younger years, and then eventually playing for you, was how much time you put into team development. And how you did get these group of different people across different countries and different cultures to play together as a one complete team there. If you don't mind, touch a little bit on some of the things that you did with that. I think a big thing was, some of the meetings that you had with the team and those team building exercises. Speak on those for a little bit if you don't mind.
Well, it's funny because talking to some of my former players who are long out of game now, they remember a lot of those times as much as well, some of the great wins that we had. But it was funny because some of those things, and sometimes they would just be silly little games that I would kind of orchestrate for the team, and asking guys things like, hey, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite cereal? Where are you from? How many siblings you have? And it would seem like kind of trivial. Of course, we'd ask deeper questions too, but I think the more we find out about people, and we find out, hey, what are you afraid of? What's your biggest fear in life? What's your biggest dream? What do you want to accomplish? And as we gather in a circle and we talk about some of these things that had nothing to do with athletics or the game of soccer, they basically had to do with life. That we come to appreciate and find out, about where that person's coming from. And sometimes we found, that players, really were
holding some things.
Yeah, there was some things in there. I remember one meeting we had a number of years ago, and we were in there and we were talking about, what is that, and it was a little bit about like what you had last week of talking about slaying the dragon in your life that is just constantly after you to attack you. And I remember, and it was a little bit different. It wasn't exactly the dragon, but it was along those type of things. And I had one guy, young guy, small guy, stand up and say, guys, I'm going to tell you, I've got a problem with pornography. And that opened up Pandora's box for something very positive, in that other guys started sharing some really heartfelt, deep down wounds and things that they had that were hurting them and struggles that they were having. Nothing to do with the game of soccer, but guys came to appreciate and love one another in that room because of what they were going through and how they were real about it. So even in in an athletic situation, it still comes down to, sports is just a microcosm of life. And if we could teach through sports what life really brings us, and letting them see it's not the worst thing in life is not losing a championship game, or having a terrible record, or not getting an honor or an award. Those things are, come and go, but
The glory, like, yeah, the glory of that,
the
fades
glory,
pretty quick, right?
it does.
The glory of a win, of a, it comes, it's here for a moment, and then it fleets, and then
It does, but what lasts forever is, the relationship that you have when you get up and you say, "Hey, I really struggle with this," and then a teammate comes and says, "You know what? I struggle with the same thing. Let's fight this thing together."
yeah, that's the teamwork.
That's something that doesn't happen on the field or in the court.
Hmm.
That's something that players and coaches will remember, a long time for. So those things, you have to be intentional in trying to develop the social aspect of that. But really, when it comes down to in everyday life, you know, as you get older, it becomes more and more difficult to have a really good close friend, somebody that you could tell anything to, somebody that is there for you regardless of, no matter, they know all the good, bad, and ugly about you,
Hmm.
and they still love you.
Hmm.
Those things become more and more difficult as you get older,
Hmm.
you know. But if you can find a friend where you're open and you are totally transparent with them,
Yeah, that transparency.
that's a gift in life that is going to last. I mean, hopefully it'll last a lifetime,
Right.
because those are hard to find, and especially for male individuals, they're very difficult to really develop close relationships where I could be vulnerable to you and let you know, hey, these are my weaknesses, these are things that I struggle with, these are
Hmm.
things that I'm not proud of, and for somebody else to say, you know what, I'm dealing with the same thing, or maybe I'm
Or
dealing with something,
something else.
yeah,
But yeah,
but
it
I
opens the door
understand
for that.
exactly where you're coming from. Those are the things that unite
Strengthen that
people.
bond.
Yeah. So doing it on a team is certainly one thing. It's a little bit of a challenge to do it uniformly throughout. But in life, if you could, you find those right people, you know, it's so important to be able to connect with. It might be two, it might be three, or it might just be one person. But you want to strive for that.
Right.
Who can that be? Can you find that trustworthy individual who, you can tell anything to, and and be a confidant and have a healthy social relationship. I think one of my favorite movies is I Love You Man,
Yeah, yeah.
and
I
and
wasn't expecting you to say that, but yeah, mine too, definitely.
and just the importance of like having that kind of
Having that friend, yeah.
male friend that you're open to, and you do things together, you have a good time together, but you're there for each other when things really matter.
Yeah, you pointed out some really cool things, and throughout the videos that I've been putting out, we talk a lot about how it's important to have these balance in these different areas, and how each one kind of all plays its part in having this wheel that successfully drives you forward in life, and just tying the how much, to go back to the last video, the mental toughness, and slaying that dragon, and having that courage and self-confidence to be able to take on whatever it is that you're scared to take on. A big part of that, that equips you for that, is just professing what that dragon is. Once you figure out what that dragon is, it's just professing it to someone.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, it helps that person, take on whatever their dragon is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's strength in numbers there,
Mm-hmm.
of how you two are taking this thing on together. Where as I'm facing something difficult, you're coming in and helping me with this and take this on, and instilling confidence in me to be able to do that, which only comes from being able to speak out about those kind of things, and that level of comfortability that comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the biggest bridge that you have to cross to get to that dragon is just finding that person that you can just have trust in, and say, like, hey, this is what I struggle with. And for some people that is the first dragon,
Mm-hmm.
that they face in life, is just telling that to somebody,
Mm-hmm.
right? Once that bond is made, that connection is made, if you don't mind touching a little bit about this, and your thoughts on the strength that comes from the accountability of that, of being able to kind of hold yourselves accountable to those kind of things.
Well, we talked a lot about accountability. In fact, there were times when I would encourage guys on a team to get together and and to have, these real talk, real life dynamic sessions, and I wouldn't be there, so that they wouldn't feel like
The
they'd feel
pressure.
threatened, or they'd feel like they couldn't say certain things around me. But I would try to empower my captains and team leaders to, orchestrate this thing. So there's power in a small group, and certainly as a team you got to bring it together. But even in a small group of guys coming together and being accountable, it reminds me of a cartoon I watched as a kid called Tennessee Tuxedo. And Tennessee would always have a problem, and he would go to Professor Whoopi, and Professor Whoopi would have the solution, but he always had the solution in his closet. So Professor Whoopi would have to go and open his closet, and when he did, all this junk came piling out of the closet, and Professor Whoopi would actually be buried in this junk. But then he'd say, Tennessee, I found the solution right here, and he'd come out with it. And that's kind of what happens with accountability, is that when you go to a friend and you're telling them that of your situation, and they say, you know what, I think I might have the answer to that, but in doing so, they open up a closet of garbage, in their own life to kind of say, hey, look at all this, right? But yet, hey, we're going to work this out. We're still going to find the solution, and together, Professor Whoopi and Tennessee Tuxedo would save the day.
Yeah.
But until you kind of open up that closet and let all your skeletons come out and all those things, and you only do that with people you can trust.
Right.
You certainly don't want to do it. I mean, it could be a horrific thing to
do
tell
that with
somebody that isn't the right person.
Who's looking for self-profit out of it, or
yeah, or just somewhere down the line they come back and it could haunt you. You got to be careful about who you trust. But as you find somebody to do that, that is going to be, vulnerable as much as you are, then you've got something where it could be a special relationship. But just as we intentionally would have these meetings, with the team, and intentionally try to incorporate this dynamic of social health and within the team, it's got to be like that with each person's search to develop their own social identity and their own, uh, individualism, in terms of developing themselves and being that healthy person socially. Is that it takes work. You got to reach out. You got to get into your,
yeah,
you got to get out of your comfort zone,
zone.
and you got to try things that perhaps you're not really accustomed to doing. And if you do that, you're going to find that there are friends out there and there's people out there that are great people and they can really help you.
Yeah.
And in doing that, we started out talking before we started the video that no man is an island to himself. We were not made. We are not physically capable to deal with life as a hermit.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not Tom Hanks living on the island. All right, we have got to be.
Wilson.
We are socially connected. In fact, right, Tom Hanks even had to find Wilson, right?
Right.
But that didn't work out too well neither. You got to find another human that you can connect with, and if it's your spouse, then you're blessed by that. But finding somebody even, the same gender who can identify and be that friend for you, those things are critical in your development as a person and later on in your success in life.
And so we touched on, like, even Tom Hanks recognized the importance of having something to connect with, right? Which for him came in the form of volleyball, right? So even, isolated on his own, he knew how important that was. And that comes a little bit easier for some people, some extroverts and some people who are just naturally more social than others. Some people a little bit more naturally, a little bit more shy. As somebody who recruiting is such a big element of your success and how you've recruited a lot of players that probably could have gone and played at the next the higher division. Do you have any kind of advice from a recruiting standpoint of as people look to build their own team of friends and people they can trust? Are there any techniques, any tactics that they can use to really try and help find those people for them?
It's just a lot of work, but I'll say this, I think, in just kind of tweaking that a little bit, is I'm not sure I've recruited a lot of guys that just, on the surface were guys that could have gone on and played at a higher level and so on. I feel like more so, and it's not because of my own doing, but I feel more so we've had guys that have come in, and by the time they were done, could go on and play, and could have
development.
played at a Division I, and could have gone on and played, even perhaps professionally, as some have. You know, but what was the difference there is that those guys that came in who might have had the goods deep down inside, they had to have those things develop.
Mm-hmm.
So getting around people that made them believe that they could do that,
Right.
having that social network that said, yeah, hey man, you're an amazing player, you're capable of being something really special, and all those things that we do to push somebody and encourage them, and have them excel into some kind of new heights for themselves. Those are the most rewarding ones that I've seen, and I can think of a number of guys that I've had over the years that have developed so much that they became much more of a college player than I ever thought they would be. And not that I didn't believe in them. I had one player a number of years ago where I told him as a sophomore, I said, you know what, man, you're going to be an All-American by your senior year. And I was wrong about that. He was an All-American by his junior year, and then into his senior year. And so sometimes you're speaking those words of life into somebody. Those things can be as powerful as somebody who comes in who has all the ability in the world, but you've made somebody because of the things that you said and the friendships and relationship that you've had. You made that person really excel and become a lot more.
Help them to excel.
Yeah, and made them reach heights that they could not have perhaps attained without you being their friend.
Right. Again, going back to that confidence, instilling
Mm-hmm.
that confidence where you, as a coach, as a mentor, instilled that confidence into an individual to help them reach things that they didn't even realize that they could do.
And his teammates, and
his
that's what I'm
teammates,
saying. His teammates too, because his teammates are there, and they're doing the same thing. Because why? Because I try to bring in guys that are going to be positive and not going to be negative and not going to be jealous of somebody else who might be better than them, but pushing them to new heights.
Interesting. No, I think it was. Oh, it was actually in the book that I was reading that really inspired a lot of Klowd9 in talking about a lot of these kind of habits that we talk about creating in these videos. He mentioned social wellness and talked a lot about the importance of family, but also talked about friends. Where I think he said, I think he was a little bit more referring to on your financial aspect, but it carries into different areas. Was he said that most people are an average of their 5 closest friends. So naturally, for somebody who does want to get ahead, if you're spending a lot of time with people who are making a lot less money than you, or or are doing a lot of things that you don't really feel necessarily right about, you're going to become a product of that environment. So is there any advice that you can give to people to really seek out the bring up that average, to seek out those people who would kind of help bring up that average that they can confide in?
That's the first I've heard of the average of 5 friends, and I think there's some validity to that. Of the people you're around. I mean, if you look at the 5 people you're closest to, and take a really be very introspective, and trying to evaluate where they are and what they're doing. That's a good time to recognize where you are, to do an assessment to see where you might be. And is that what you want to be doing? And if you're talking in terms of financial, like, you want to be making the same salary that your top 5 friends are making. So I think there's something there, certainly in the financial realm. But it's a similar thing, and I don't know if all the numbers are correct or whatever, but I've always tried to think of it in terms of an 80-20 type of approach in terms of team development. Is that if 80% of my guys are good guys or quality guys that think a lot like I do, then I could maybe bring in some guys that might be, very talented, but a little bit questionable in certain areas that I would want them to be, to improve on. But I'm taking a chance on that, knowing that I've got 80% of my team that's going to have an influence on that. If I only had 20% of my team that is really buys into what I'm about and that has those same values that I have, then bringing somebody in that might not have that, chances are they're going to be around a lot of other guys that they're not going to adapt and not going to change. So you want to be around, people that are going to be what you want to be, and that have those goals. And that's, from the time that you're in elementary school through your teens, parents always are talking about, the friends that you're around, and that's why your mother and I were always concerned about what friends you had, and we wanted to be involved with that because the friends that you make, your associations, that you choose to be around are going to have a tremendous impact in your development as a person and what your goals and what your values and what's important in life. And so socially, you've got to, I don't know if there's any trick to it other than the fact that you got to go out. It's hard work. You got to find somebody. You got to go
To
out
find someone
and get out of your shell. And if you're introverted, it's easier said than done. But that's part of it. You'll find somebody who also is introverted. But there are people out there that you got to be around the positive influence. And if not, then your life is going to continue to spiral in the same direction that those five, or what might be, are going. If they're going up, then you're going to be going, with them.
right.
If they're spiraling out of control, chances are you're probably going to be
right.
not far behind.
Gotcha. It was kind of interesting. I saw a video lately of Ty Lopez. You know who he is?
Mm-mm.
He's somebody who kind of caught on to the digital marketing scene pretty early on, and has since become a multi-millionaire. But I remember, I think he called it the rule of 33, where he said that if you take all the people in your life, you want to dedicate 33% of that time to the younger ones than you. 33% of the time to whether it's the youth or people to invest in. It's people to believe in, and instill confidence in them.
Mm-hmm.
33% of that time you want to dedicate to your peers, to the friends that you have, the close ones, where perhaps those friends that you can be a little bit more trusting in and hold each other accountable to. And then he also talked about dedicating 33% to people who you want to be like. Dedicate 33% of your time to the people that are at the place that you see yourself in life. On those different areas that we talk about. Your physical wellness, your mental wellness. What kind of habits are they implementing in their life that I can take from and implement into my life. And then he said, that 1% you want to dedicate to those people's mentor, those people's coaches, is dedicate 1%, a small percentage of your time, to the ones who they look up to and try to learn from them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a good way to kind of show, like, hey, invest in the younger generation, have the people that you can trust and level with, and then always be learning from those people that you want to be like. And thank you for being that person for me that I could always look up to, and admire and respect, and implement the healthy habits that you've implement in your life, and learn from those, and take those and put them into my own life. So thank you for that, as not only as a son, but as a player of yours as well, as somebody who is building a team of my own, a team of guys to help me with Klowd9. In closing, is there any other thing that you want to say to the next generation of people, the people that support Klowd9 and watch these videos? Any closing statements that you have?
It's great that you have the ability to kind of get feedback and see what people are thinking in terms of how difficult it might be for them, in developing friends, and even Klowd9 can be a social network as well,
very much so.
Of being able to, hey, you know what, maybe I can meet some people in here that are going in the same direction that I am, and I want to be a part of that.
Right.
So I think in that regard, with whole Klowd9 mission and philosophy, this could be a good thing from a social standpoint of getting with people that have the same kind of mindset. So keep up the Klowd9.
Thanks.
And
absolutely right. Yeah. Trying to connect with people. Well, thanks for joining us. Looking forward to spending the remainder of the time you have here together, and we will touch base with you guys next week. So.
Yeah, I got to run. I got an interview with Joe Buck next from.
Yeah.
Yeah, on ESPN, but.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.